So hello and welcome to this presentation on diet and dementia. So my name is Alison Sproston and I'm an older person's mental health dietitian working for Cwmtaff Morgannwg Health Board. And I'll be taking you through this short presentation today that has been written by a group of us dietitians with a special interest in dementia in Wales. So the purpose of this presentation then is to help you know a little bit more about what a dietitian does, to understand the role of diet and nutrition plays in dementia prevention, understand how dementia affects dietary intake and what malnutrition and undernutrition are, and how we screen for this and how dietitians can help to prevent and treat it. So a few quotes here from the British Dietetic Association then. So dietitians are the only nutrition professionals that are regulated by law and have to abide by a code of conduct. So we have to be registered by members of the Health and Care Professions Council in order to practice. So what we do is we assess and diagnose and treat dietary and nutritional problems at both an individual and a wider public health level as well. And we interpret the science of nutrition to improve health and treat disease conditions through education and providing practical and personalised advice to quite a wide range of people. So that's a little bit of a background about what dietitians do. So we'll move on to dementia prevention and we can have a look at what role diet and nutrition can play in this. So in 2020 then, the Lancet Commission re-looked at what they had previously identified as risk factors of dementia, and they identified 3 new modifiable risk factors. So now there are 12 known modifiable risk factors, and 5 of which you can see highlighted there on the slide, that where advice around diet and nutrition could be helpful to support somebody to reduce their risk of developing dementia. So we'll take a look at these over the next few slides then. So firstly, hypertension. So dietitians can help to lower blood pressure and reduce the risk of hypertension by providing dietary advice around reducing somebody's intake of salt. So in addition to salt, we can provide advice around reducing alcohol intake and caffeine intake, because these can also help to maintain a healthy blood pressure. So as well as obesity then being a risk factor in developing dementia in its own right, maintaining a healthy weight can also help to maintain healthy blood pressure. So to support people to maintain a healthy weight, what dietitians can do is to provide advice and support around making small but achievable and maintainable changes to the diet and lifestyle. So for some people, this may include sort of psychological support as well to change eating behaviours around food. So whilst perhaps it's a less obvious link, what we eat and drink can have a significant impact on how we think and how we feel. So for example, if somebody is experiencing depression, making dietary changes can help with their symptoms. So we can look at helping people to eat regularly, having balanced meals, including some carbohydrates and proteins and vegetables in their diet, having some good fats and drinking plenty of water. These seem to be quite helpful. So on to diabetes. It's thought that the risk of dementia increases with the duration and the severity of diabetes. So maintaining healthy weight and diet can help to prevent somebody firstly actually developing type 2 diabetes, and also helping to manage and prevent complications if somebody actually does have diabetes. So finally then, alcohol consumption. So dietitians can help to provide advice on what's now called low-risk alcohol consumption as part of the healthy dietary advice that they provide. So reducing alcohol can help to manage hypertension and weight too. So what we can start to see here is that a lot of these factors are all interlinked together. We also thought it would be worthwhile a mention to tell you about the research that's gone into the specific nutrients and whether any specific nutrients can reduce the risk of developing dementia. But results so far have been quite inconclusive with this. So evidence doesn't currently support recommending any specific nutrient itself. However, looking at more sort of diets then, the Mediterranean style diet, which consists of things like lots of fruit and vegetables, lean meats, beans and fibre, are recommended to reduce the risk of cognitive decline and dementia, because they do appear to be quite beneficial. So to conclude this section then, we've popped a selection of fact sheets on these healthy eating messages onto Padlet. So if you think any of your service users might find them beneficial, they're there for you. And if you feel that anyone would benefit from more specifically tailored advice from a dietitian, then please contact your local dietetic department. So the second part of the presentation then, we'll look at nutrition whilst living with dementia. So we look at how and why dementia can be affected with food and drink intake, and again, how dietitians can help with this. So firstly, we look at why people may experience malnutrition or undernutrition. So research shows that 1 in 7 people living in the community with newly diagnosed Alzheimer's disease are at risk of undernutrition. So like you can see there then that the prevalence of weight loss and risk of undernutrition in this group is quite high, and it's associated with negative health outcomes. So some of the reasons why people with dementia are at risk of undernutrition are on this slide here. So you can see memory loss, cognitive difficulties, things like low mood, changes to behaviour, perceptual changes and increased activity. So all of these tend to lead to decreased intake and sometimes increased requirements. So again, if we go through these in turn, so if we look at how memory loss can affect food intake, so we find that memory loss can lead to problems in the earlier stages of dementia, when a person might still be living independently at home with little support, because they tend to forget to go shopping perhaps, or forget to prepare and cook food, and as a result they will forget to eat. So we find that some may forget that they've actually already eaten and actually eat more, but this is less of a common problem. Some might forget familiar foods, and along with this, the enjoyment that that food can bring people. So this brings with it sort of that people don't feel like or fancy eating anything, so there's no drive to sort of eat anymore. So moving on then to cognitive changes. So this can lead to people requiring a bit more encouragement and support to eat and drink. So they may have difficulties with recognising that it's a meal time, forgetting perhaps how to use cutlery, may lead to them having poor hand-to-eye coordination and finding it difficult to start the movement of moving the food from the plate to the mouth, or difficulty perhaps with the process of eating and drinking within the mouth itself. So, and it's also common then in the later stages of dementia for people to experience swallowing difficulties due to these cognitive changes. So then we'd turn to speech and language therapists then to provide some advice around safer textures of diet and fluids. So it's also common for people living with dementia to experience changes to their mood and changes to behaviour as well. So low mood can lead to a lack of interest in meals and snacks, as you can imagine. And some people have difficulty in settling at meal times, or they may start refusing foods by turning their head away, clamping their mouth shut perhaps, or verbally sort of refusing food. So all of these factors tend to lead to a decreased quantity of food and drink being consumed. So if somebody living with dementia has a sudden change in behaviour, though, it's always worth considering sort of any physical cause, because it could be a sign of something else like pain or constipation or something like that. So going on to perceptual changes then. So as we all age, we often experience sensory changes, and this is no different in dementia. So the loss of hearing or impaired hearing can make a busy dining room or a kitchen quite unsettling for somebody, because they might find it a bit more difficult to filter out background noises. So then it makes it harder for them to focus on eating their meal. So with poor eyesight then and perceptual changes, it can make it more difficult for people to see the meal that's in front of them. So for example, if you popped mashed potato and cauliflower onto a white plate, then they might not be able to differentiate between the plate and the food on it. In addition to this as well, sort of patterned plates can sometimes look dirty to somebody with dementia, or may appear like the pattern is moving. So this is quite off-putting. So there's also a tendency to gradually lose our taste as we get older. So with sweet being actually the last one that we lose. So this can lead to changes in preference at meal times. So savoury meals often end up tasting quite bland. And so that obviously can cause a knock-on effect then on appetite. So looking at increased activity then, so some people with dementia may no longer like to sit to eat down, and some may just become more active in the day and awake more at night. And this activity can lead to weight loss, as you can imagine, and undernutrition, as it'll cause somebody to have increased requirements, as well as then if they're not sort of settled at meal times, it means that they're taking in less. So what are the risks then if somebody isn't eating a balanced diet? So malnutrition is a serious condition that happens when our diet doesn't contain the right amount of nutrients. So it means having poor nutrition, basically. So somebody can have a healthy weight or be overweight, but still have malnutrition if the diet doesn't contain the right amount of nutrients in the right balance. So undernutrition, though, refers to somebody not getting enough nutrients, including energy and protein. So typically these people tend to be underweight then. So people living with dementia are usually at risk of undernutrition because of what we've been speaking about. However, we do see people with malnutrition if they are managing to eat adequate calories, but they sort of are restricting the diet a bit. So we do see a lot of people tending to go for sort of sweeter foods and avoiding more of the protein-rich savoury meals. So what are the consequences of malnutrition then? So we can see here that there's a few knock-on effects. So weight loss can lead to a loss of muscle mass, which can cause loss of function and then loss of independence. And this can then knock on to having an increased risk of falls and general frailty. So a malnourished or undernourished person will have a weakened immune system, and then they are more prone to things like illnesses and infections and take them longer to recover, and may also lead to longer admissions in hospital or longer lengths of stay. So it can also lead as well to low mood and confusion. So again, not great for appetite and intake. So what we're looking out for then to look for the common signs of undernutrition. So unintentional weight loss then, so you may be able to see this if somebody steps on the scales, or if you're just looking at somebody, you might see that their clothes aren't fitting as well anymore, jewellery becoming a little looser, dentures looser, and glasses looser as well. And some people might tell you that they're feeling a little bit more tired, or you may notice them having more frequent bouts of illnesses. So, and as well as this, you may have somebody that's to have delayed wound healing, or may start having more pressure areas, especially if they have a low BMI. So how do we know if somebody's malnourished then or at risk of malnutrition? So the malnutrition screening tool, so what we know as MUST, is the only validated screening tool to screen for malnutrition in the community. So it uses information such as a person's current weight and any weight loss to follow through a 5-step process, and the final step gives you the risk of malnutrition and some helpful management guidelines. So all of this information again is on the Padlet for you to have a look at, and on BatePen. So how can dietitians help? So as we can see, that good nutrition is important to maintain independence and well-being. So dietitians, we try to work collaboratively with the person living with dementia and their care partners to offer practical advice and support to help to treat and prevent malnutrition. So by providing specific advice tailored to them to provide dietary support. So our advice can include things like food fortification, so adding extra nutrients to meals and snacks, and using supplements if they're needed. We can suggest practical changes for mealtime environments, so looking at maybe timings of meals or snacks or different types of meals and snacks to try. And we can offer practical advice for maintaining independence at mealtime, so things like plate guards and things like that, so we can link with occupational therapists here. And as well, if somebody is placed on texture modified diet, then we can provide practical advice around this, so again linking with speech and language therapists here. And as well, we can offer practical and psychological support on nutrition and hydration to care partners as well, and provide emotional and practical support in issues arising maybe in end-of-life care around nutrition and hydration. So, so the last 2 points here, what we're talking about maybe is shifting the focus from trying to fully meet nutritional requirements to then only using food and drink where it can provide care and enjoyment and comfort for somebody. So then in summary then, so what we've discussed is the role that diet plays in dementia prevention. We've looked at how and why dementia affects nutritional intake, the consequences of not having adequate nutrition, what the MUST tool is used for, and what dietitians can do to help prevent malnutrition and maintain independence and support in end-of-life care. So that concludes the presentation. So for further information, please look under the dietetics section on Padlet. And thank you for listening, and hopefully you found the presentation useful.